Okay, we are here talking about language completeness and consistency, and we have a variety of items here. Okay, first up, Dataset Store Now button. Okay, so by default, a big data set will not have all its data stored directly in the notebook, correct?
Correct.
Right.
What else, like, is there an iconize that doesn't have everything stored in the notebook or not yet?
No. Iconize is, its whole purpose is to dump things into the notebook as it's currently implemented. I mean, the other things which have store now buttons are things like sparse array and quantity array and probably interpolating function and some statistics functions. Right, so the store now button is really for things which, the kernel computes a result, but it's, large, so we don't necessarily want to stick all of it into the notebook.
Right.
And so you can see here with the wider data sets, then the store now button looks just like it does for, sparse array or whatever other, thing does. Now for very narrow data sets, which is the top two images, then Billy has spec'd this little icon, which I guess is just the icony part of the store now button with a tooltip. And
right. So I mean, the fact that it's red is because we think it's kind of a warning that the data is not, right there in the notebook, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a big problem with this. Anybody else have a problem with this? I mean,
well, so my concern is about the small button. If it really adequately, and maybe it's just me, but
I think people have to get used to it. I mean, I think there's nothing we can do in that.
Is it possible to click the button in the tooltip?
And what tooltip?
In the tooltip.
How do you know that there's a tooltip there if you don't see anything?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood that question, Brett.
I mean, the store now is in the tooltip here.
Right. But I'm asking, is it possible to actually click a link that's in the tooltip?
Oh, I see.
No.
You're asking, is it technically possible?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think tooltips are in any way.
Well, we could have a pop-up.
Yeah, it would have to be something else, but
right.
I think the confusion is the chevron at the end, store now. Usually that's a text link. So if maybe it didn't have the chevron, it was just a period. So that way the button itself.
Actually, what I implemented has a slightly different wording. It has the same, right. It says something like click data not in notebook, click to store now without the chevron.
But that one doesn't. This one down here is just store now, right?
Right, because you click that directly. But this is in the tooltip, which you don't click.
So that's on hover.
Right.
And then that says click to store now.
It tells you that you need to click that in order to store.
Seems okay to me. What's this blue color that you have here?
That's
I
the
think
hover effect.
Yeah, the hover effect.
This looks fine.
I mean, I think my concern is that if it says click, people may still try clicking into the text instead of the original button.
Yeah, maybe we should say click button to store.
Oh, gosh. Come on. I mean, wait a minute. So,
I mean, they won't actually be able to click the text. If they move
Right.
toward the text, it'll disappear.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So yeah, I guess that's fine.
Have a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. All right, good. Let's move on. Allows span as a grid style spec.
Right. So there's an example there at the bottom where if this were implemented, that list 1.1 and list 3.3 could be written as spans. So I am not a fan of this proposal.
Wait a minute, span takes 2 arguments, doesn't it?
Right. So the list 1 could be span of 1 comma 1, or 1 semicolon semicolon 1 if you wrote it that way.
Yeah, but it could also be 1 semicolon semicolon 7 or something.
Right. That's one of my concerns, that span.
But isn't that exactly what one wants? I mean, so in other words, if I said 1 7 here is red, that would seem useful to me.
Yeah, right, but you could also just write list 1 7.
No, but I know, but the point is that we didn't have span at the time when we defined this quite obscure grid specification language.
Right, which is one of my concerns. Right, so first of all, I mean, there's no such thing as, right, the 3-element span, right? There's no such equivalent in the grid language. And
isn't there? I mean, isn't there couldn't you have alternating X, black, red, black, red? We don't have that.
I mean,
that would be a nice thing to have.
I mean, you could. I mean, you can do that as a, as a sort of, right? You can have the alternating specs, if you just give a spec, but in the rule language, then no, there isn't.
Look, this is horrifyingly complicated.
Exactly.
And arguably, the whole thing should be turned into something which has a more symbolic specification. I mean,
so basically, my argument is it's horrifyingly complicated. Really, this list 1 thing is only really documented via an example. There isn't even really a note that speaks to that. So,
there isn't.
No, it says, spec.
No, it's spec 1.
It's
I see.
Rules, but nowhere does it say that rules can be.
What to use at this position? It doesn't say there's a multidimensional.
Right.
Is that multidimensional?
That is.
Or do we even know?
I was going to say, if you change that 1 1 to 1 3, can we see what happens? And maybe get rid of the 3 3 rule?
Right, so that'll be.
Right, I mean, so you're just indexing
that is horrifyingly
into the
undocumented.
Right, okay, so did I actually type this in wrong? Because there is certainly a way to get columns 1 3. So yeah. If you scroll down to the scope examples, there is an example which shows that it can be a span-like thing, and
yeah, Sandra on our live stream is pointing out alternation is possible. Yeah, that's right. Alternation is possible, and this. Okay, the fact that this thing, I'm totally confused by what this even is. I mean,
right, and I think
that extra brace doesn't help anything.
Right, so I think. Right, so what is the way to do? Like I said, can you scroll down to the scope examples on?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the documentation is not right here.
And scroll down a bit more. There will be. Okay, so that's okay. So I guess that is the example I took, which I thought was the one that showed. Chris,
okay, this one here is just totally weird.
Right, it's saying position 1 1 and position 3 3 in the grid.
I know that, but this example, those first 2 things. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me read something here. Oh, look.
Yeah.
The 3rd element is a special thing.
Right. It's
But
the
it
rule.
doesn't then document, but it needs to document that. Up here, it needs to document what rules can be.
Right.
I mean, honestly, what we should do here is we should provide an alternative syntax that is an association that says rows, arrow, blah, columns, arrow, blah. You know,
Oh,
arrow, blah.
okay. So, all right. So I know what I did wrong. Okay. So yeah. So if you scroll down one more example to in the right. So that one where the left hand side.
Oh yeah, it's completely undocumented. Right. That behavior is completely undocumented.
Right. And so that 1.3 is what can be replaced. Spanified. And
okay, so what else spanifies like that? I mean, in other words, if I did that as a sparse array, does sparse array allow spanning like that?
Sparse array has banded. I'm not sure if it allows. Well, it won't allow that. Oh yeah.
It could allow that.
Right. Sparse array takes rules. Right, pattern rules, right? So you could have like,
Oh, I understand.
Underscore
but
even
I think
Q.
this seems like a useful thing because I mean it does take banded,
right?
And whereas grid doesn't take banded. Yeah, so this particular thing, that thing there, makes sense as intervals. In the case, look, okay, we've got a mess on our hands here.
Yes, I agree.
We've got, I mean, what should be the case is that a sparse array specification, I mean, what if you actually give a sparse array as the grid background, for example, or something like that? I mean, in other words, it should interoperate. Grid and sparse array should interoperate.
I mean, sort of. You don't really have a sparse grid, right? I mean, so
no, but I'm saying that you can spray color into the grid.
Right.
Okay, right now, look, span seems like a very natural thing to use in a grid specification.
I would agree if it, if we actually supported, skips, which we don't.
In what? In span?
In grid. Right. So
we don't support skips, but we do because we have this.
No, we don't.
Only on the right-hand side. I mean, you can effectively make it skip by giving it a list of.
Okay, but we could, in principle. I think we just sort of gave up the ghost before we got to that. I don't see why we shouldn't. In principle, we can clearly have a rewrite rule that goes from a skipping span to something in the grid specification.
So how can, Chris, how can you do that? So you're saying
if you change the right-hand side to say a list of pink cyan, then it alternates, and if you, instead of cyan you use none, it effectively skips.
I see.
Okay, but listen, let's zoom out for a second. We've got two different things going on here. One is the arrival of table view, right, which is coming. I don't know whether table view. Can I see table view here? I mean, the final arrival after a decade of table view. So if I say table I to the j, I goes to 10, j goes to 10, and then I say table view of that. Ta-da. Okay, now how does this relate? What on earth is that? And that hasn't been designed yet. By the way, here we can clearly drag out the size. Right, but for grid, I don't know what we would want it to do. I mean, and I don't know the relationship. We've now got three constructs: grid, data set. Well, table view is purely two-dimensional.
As is grid. I mean.
Right. Well, Ethan is asking, could he resize grids by dragging like graphics? I don't think that makes any sense. What do you want to do? Increase the gutter sizes? Because that's the only thing that's flexible is the gutter sizes. The actual element sizes, well, if you want to resize like graphics, use graphics grid. That's its point. Ethan's asking for an image size option to grid. That's not what you should do. What you should be doing is using graphics grid. I mean, I don't know what happens if I say graphics grid of, you know, some set of random numbers. What does this do?
It'll do something.
Yeah, I think that's hunky dory. I mean, that does. Look at that. I bet we don't. Look at that.
Graphics
no
grid
idea
is
that would
documented to not require graphics input.
So it automatically graphixifies.
Well, it's, you know, inset can eat anything. You know, if you had big long things, I have no idea what the line wrapping behavior would be. Probably
Ethan is
something
complaining
horrible.
that graphics grid is old and slow. I don't believe that's the case. If it is,
I mean, I don't think it's slow, but it's, you know, a V6 function.
So what?
I'm just saying, you know, in response to the old claim.
Now what happened here? Oh wow, that's cool.
So
I had no idea that worked.
Right. I mean, I think there are, I mean, I have certain things I would like of sort of improved item size specs in grid, but.
Okay, my question is this. Okay, so first of all, how much of the grid? Okay, let me just try this.
Right, and let me point out that the grid.
Does this work?
Almost, maybe, but I doubt it. Oh, okay, fine. Prove me wrong. I'm pretty sure that graphics grid does not, you know, have feature-to-feature parity with grid.
Well, that should be looked at.
Yes.
That's why we're in a language completeness and consistency with an emphasis on completeness.
Correct.
Meeting.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, but this is cool. I did not know this worked.
Right.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. Okay, so we've got a couple of issues. One is the specification of subarrays in for styling for grid and graphics grid and so on. Okay, how that relates to the specification of subarrays for things like sparse array. Right. So, for example, banded is surely not supported in grid.
No.
Even though it could perfectly well be in principle. I mean, in other words.
Right. Although let me point out that these specs, while they're not, in grid, while they're not 100%, they do largely correspond to what the front end supports. So for example, if you do 2-3 like you did there, and you add rows, then it will continue to highlight 2-3. But if you did 2-3 and you added rows, then and then it would
All right, so let me add a row. Okay, cool. That's nice. Now notice, of course, that with graphics grid, I'm out of luck in terms of adding a row, right? Okay, there was a question from Brian. Why didn't the font size increase when the graphics grid is enlarged? Now, I think I can say, can't I? What could I stay there in terms of the font size? If I say styled, here, can I use a scaled specification for font size?
You should be able to. I mean, you might have to explicitly say font size, but you can try. What is that? It's not a list of.
Oh, it's no longer a list because you wrapped it around the whole.
Right, you need a map at level 2 or something.
Okay, so I have to style. Oh, all right, I'll just map it at level 2.
You can probably use base style.
I'll just do the very pedestrian thing of mapping at level 2 here. Okay, now let's see what happens. Ta-da! Beautiful. Right. So that's magnificent. I wonder whether there's an example in the documentation that shows that. If there isn't, there should be.
Yeah,
I'm sure there isn't.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm reasonably confident there isn't.
I think we should have that.
I just took a screenshot of it. So,
and arguably, we should have some workflow about making grids that, because this is useful. I mean, Sandra is complaining that graphics grid uses insets. So, I see. Saying so it eats anything. Yeah, it's true, isn't it, that it uses insets?
correct.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is that if it's arbitrary, because
okay, there's a complaint from Ethan that graphics grid is too slow. Why? Is it true? I mean, I use graphics grid quite a bit, and I have to say I don't find it particularly slow.
I was going to say the ones you're doing right now haven't seemed especially slow.
No, but
if he has examples, he should make sure to send them in.
Yeah, I've used it quite a bit, and I don't see it as being slow. I mean, the only thing that I can imagine that goes wrong is the insanity of, well, let's look at this. Did we ever solve this problem? Oh, by the way, you still owe me graphics row, packing stuff, Brett.
Yes.
Which hopefully is coming, right?
Improvements are coming a little bit in 12.1, and after whichever meeting we were discussing this in last week, I came up with an idea for how it might be possible to do the dynamic resizing in a more efficient way than I had been thinking, which will probably slow down graphics grid a bit. But
well, okay, I think this is an issue here. What did I just do here? Table. What on earth? Okay, so this is the hard case, right? Maybe not. I mean, that ground away for a while when it first ran.
Yeah, it took a second, maybe 2 there.
Oh, it probably won't see the absolute timing, will it?
It will.
2 seconds. Okay, what was it doing? It was trying to solve some optimization problem, right?
I'm guessing it was. I mean,
was it rasterizing things?
I mean, it shouldn't need to rasterize in that case.
No. There's no rasterization. The issue is solving. Think about the following problem. This thing has a certain width and height for each row, right?
I don't think it's doing any optimization.
I
think it's just.
I mean, I don't think it's doing an
maxes.
actual optimization problem.
Right.
I mean, I think it's running a heuristic to.
No, it was
something.
doing. At some point, it was using constrained min to do actual optimization.
You can
By the
compare
way,
it to just the timing for a list of those graphics.
I mean, that's instantaneous. There's no work that happens there.
Okay, so I claim if I do absolute aspect ratio to 1 here, for example.
I think it's still going to be 2 seconds.
Okay, that's crazy. What the heck is it doing? Brett, that's for you to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be doing.
We don't know. Go figure it out.
Yeah.
That's weird and crazy. However, I kind of want to know, we don't have a way of displaying these graphics in a sense Pinterest style, do we?
Was it image collage? But no, that's not quite Pinterest style, because Pinterest style has what? Columns that are packed?
Fixed width, unfixed height.
Right. So it's packed per column. basically. I don't think we
that
have
option.
that.
We need that option because we have that
Pinterest
option for
pack.
gallery view. Well, I don't think it can be called Pinterest pack, but but we have that option in gallery view. Okay. So if we can note that down and talk about that. But this is outrageous. This 2-second thing is outrageous. Okay, so someone is asking if we can just do this. All right, let's see. We have the technology here. We can. I don't know whether we. I mean, if that. Okay, what on earth is going on here? Look at that thing. Look at that.
I'm pretty sure it's a rasterization type thing to measure sizes.
Okay, well, let's find out. Let's find out. Is it going up as a square or not? It doesn't look like a square to me. That looks super quadratic, right? If I'm, maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong. It's quadratic.
Okay. Right, so we're hitting some cost per graphic.
Got to figure out what's going on. It's fortunate. It's okay. All right. Image collage, multi-column, both. Ethan is pointing out multi-column does the Pinterest style thing, but a gallery view. I think so. Missing feature Ethan would love to see is a proper 2D tree map. Which is an intrinsically dynamic visualization, isn't it? Or am I confused?
It can be static. I mean, but usually it's going to have a tooltip or something because you're going to get rectangles that are really small.
I see.
And
okay, so by the way, Brett, we are supposed to have our graphics visualization types summit meeting sometime soon.
Okay. And how widespread should that be?
Whatever you've considered. I mean, all the random things that people have asked for and so on. Let's look at them all and let's try and prioritize them.
Okay. We'll pull together the
right. And tree maps should certainly be in there.
Tree maps are, yeah. I mean, the difficulty with the tree map is that drawing the tree map is relatively easy. The big question is, sort of what form the data is coming in, because it's just really weird things.
Okay.
And so.
Yeah. I answered to Ali on the live stream. I'm certain it's the graphics grid that's slowing it down, although I should check. I'm sure if we do this just with the graphics, without graphics grid, it should be instantaneous.
10 to the -6th or whatever.
Yeah, it's instantaneous. Something's going wrong with graphics grid. So thanks.
I think it's working harder to get a size of something than it needs to in this case.
Either that or it's doing something. Okay, we got to find this. This is a problem. I don't think Ethan needs to send an example. We already have the example.
Yep.
It's horrifying. We should fix it.
Okay.
Really horrifying. I'm really surprised this didn't come up before. But there's a lot of corners. Let's see. Hold on. There's a few other comments here that are interesting. Whether through dataset table view, whatever, I really like to have an easy adjustment of things like truncation threshold and wrapping for raw data visualization. So that's coming with dataset, right, Chris?
Yes.
That's going to be in 12.1. Carl is asking, nice way to working better with Cloud Publish with interactive arrows. Dataset with Cloud Publish. I believe that is being dramatically improved as well, right? Chris, have you been involved in that or not? Silence.
I'm sorry, I was writing down a note.
Okay, Cloud Publish and Dataset.
I have not looked at that.
You should. I mean, I think it's working progressively better, and I think in 1.53, which should be pushed this week to production, I think it will work even better.
Okay.
I'm so impressed with that. You know, I was just over the weekend, I was producing these giant notebooks, and I pressed Cloud Publish, and it just works. It's amazing. I'm amazed, at least. It's just a lot of stuff has to work to make that happen. Yeah, Ben is also complaining about Dataset and Cloud Publish. So we do need to track that down. But I have been tracking that, and I believe it has been improving. If not, yeah, let's track it down. And Chris, you should take responsibility for making sure that all the stuff you're implementing on the desktop actually works in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So before we declare this done,
we're not declaring it done. We haven't.
Right. So basically, my argument is, we should figure out what we actually want item style specs to look like instead of making this 1 point change.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I'm saying that we have this whole family of essentially cookie cutters, that is things that take an array and describe a subarray, describe repeating elements in an array, and so on. And whatever they are, they better also work. If I want to, wouldn't it be annoying if I could give a beautiful specification of how to color red and green in a grid, but I couldn't actually get an actual sparse array that had or an actual array that had those reds and greens in them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what we need is some converter that goes from one of these specifications, whatever wacky thing it is, and takes that specification. And even this specification here, the fact that we have no function that will take a specification like that and generate an array that is filled according to that specification is annoying. It's like an array fill or something, or array. I don't know what it is exactly, and I don't know how it relates to structured arrays or to the specifications for sparse array, but that's what I think we should study.
Okay.
This is pretty central to all of the dataset options, so whatever happens there is going to have an impact on my work.
All right.
In what way? Which dataset options?
All of the formatting options, background, alignment, all that stuff.
And are you modeling that on grid or what?
Yes. Yeah. But
okay, we better get
because
let's have a dedicated meeting with some of the relevant people. Which
are you saying it's going to be extended to be multidimensional, Chris?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I have extended it. I have a proposal, but this is going to be affected by whatever.
All right. Well, I recommend that we think about a wrapper of some kind that describes or a thing here. Anyway, whatever it is, there's got to be a function that will just give you an array filled in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're basically saying, here's this thing like sparse array, here's the specification, here's the size of the cookie, whatever. My analogy with cookie cutters is failing here, but here's the size of the tray, so to speak. Now go fill it according to the specification.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, let's come back for a second to table view. Is anybody here working? This is not the right group to discuss table view, is it?
No, we would need John, or I'm not sure who took it over after Aaron left. So,
all right, but there's a lot of elaborate stuff in table view which we're not seeing here yet, with all kinds of options of what happens and so on. So, and I don't even know what happens if you evaluate table view. You get another table view. Okay. I wonder what happens if I say normal of that. Oops, what on earth happened?
Well, table view, I believe, is, like list picker or, oh, that's nice. Right. No, so it should be a control, just like, list picker or, tree view or whatever it's called. I may be having the name right. All of our different controls.
Well, and the thing that's not happening here, which oh yes, it is happening. That's magnificent. Look at that magnificent thing. And is this even more magnificent? Oh, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that? And yes, you can. And what about the vertical height? Oh my gosh. Wow. All modern conveniences. Okay. Well, it would be good if we could find out when we're actually reviewing table view. This looks very promising.
Okay.
What happens if I try typing in text here? I don't know what that is actually. What happens if I press Shift Enter? Let's say, what is that? Is that a string? I'm totally confused by what this did.
I think it's confused because you. Oh, I think you evaluated table view of percent. Or no, that's a separate cell. Sorry.
Yeah, I evaluated this, and actually what it did here, which wasn't bad, was it treated that by default as a string, which is actually good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to table view. I think it's been a missing feature forever and ever and ever. I also want to check, and is that Devin who's here?
Yeah.
We should check what the story of this in the cloud is.
Okay, sounds good.
Ethan is recommending we look at spreadsheets in QUIP, QUIP, which I've never heard of. So, Carl is saying table view makes him want Excel in Wolfram Language. Well, there might be other things coming that are different from that, but okay, I'm just looking at Ali is asking if the discussion about the Redmine issues, I don't know when we're having our next one of those. It's a good question. When is the next public discussion of user-reported bugs in Redmine? We should probably try to do that this week before the technology conference next week. So if you could point that out, although I'm traveling a bit this week, so may end up being from some weird place. Okay, so Devin, please find out what QUIP is. Go figure that out.
Yeah.
Go figure out about the Redmine discussion. And Ali is asking, when is 12.1 coming out? We wish we knew, but it is getting closer, getting warmer.
To quote Robert X. Kringley, real soon now, a computer industry expression meaning in this lifetime, maybe.
Right. Okay, all right. So that's enough on this, but this is clearly a design mess. What's happened here? So let's clean it up. I mean,
I'll start off with this. We clearly need a separate meeting with various stakeholders and go from there.
Okay, fine. Full definition. Should full definition stop a system symbol as it stops a protected symbols?
Right. So there, and Jan, apparently there has been some discussion of full definition in some group of people that I haven't been a part of, and so Jan is here to help us bring us.
Isn't full definition used internally for all kinds of purposes, or how does it work in the case of cloud deploy when it is pulling in?
It uses full definition. I mean, it uses a slightly lower level alternative, language extended full definition, but it's essentially the same principle. And it's used if you deploy something to the cloud that pulls in definitions, but it's also used for manipulate if you just use safe definition, even if they stay on the desktop. Right. And also for parallel kernels, I think, to propagate definitions from one kernel to another.
Yeah, I know it's quite widely used, and I agree that it's probably a very blunt instrument. It works surprisingly well, considering how blunt it is.
Right, and what we've run into now, especially with the cloud, is that if the definitions blow up, it's much more of an issue in the cloud than it was elsewhere, probably. So that's why we only now find these various cases where it pulls in
Hazy
hundreds
stuff.
of built-in definitions.
So let me comment on a related thing. I object to the fact that the autocomplete sometimes shows me weird symbols in weird subterranean contexts. Have people noticed that? Nobody else has noticed.
It should if you've added something to context path, then it will show you.
Absolutely, but it also is showing me, like, I'm sure I can do that right now. If I go here and I say, look at that. Okay, why is it showing me stuff from the Packlet Manager? Well, because you're going to tell me that's on my
context path.
Okay. All right. Does anybody know, by the way, why the document generator fails to, when I evaluate a template notebook with a Packlet with something from this, why does it has bizarrely sandboxed itself? Does anybody know why that happens? Because that's, again, a full definitions like thing, right? I mean, because when you build, okay, so this is a case where full definitions is probably not being correctly used, right? So you build a template notebook, right? You use generate document, okay? I was able to use this for a very beautiful purpose over the weekend. But the question is, does generate document, do you understand what I'm asking? It is not pulling in the definitions it needs for the template notebook. Does that make sense? Everybody's silent.
Yeah, I don't use it often enough to really appreciate what you're saying. So
okay, well, let me show you what I'm saying. Because
does it have an option on whether to pull things in or not? Because
it does not. It appears not to, which seems to me to be an oversight. Because here, and I think Anthony in the UK is the one that let's see. So if I have a template notebook here, and I put in an expression, and that expression says, let's say, Packlet install of foo. Okay. All right. So that's blue there, which is a little odd, right?
Right, which means they haven't disabled. Oh, because it should be black because it's on context path, is what you're saying.
Right. Now, Packlet install.
Is it on context path for that notebook?
Or maybe they.
Aha.
Aye. So it's got its own separate context path.
Similar to the docs and whatnot.
Well, okay. So what this needs is an option, a save definitions option, because it's got to have those things. Otherwise, when this generates, it's just going to do the wrong thing. Right?
Right. Well,
I would explain, Devin, if you could screen capture this and send this to Sushma, who is probably trying to chase this particular issue for me.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. By the way, Ethan is mentioning gallery view and saying that an in-notebook version of gallery view would be useful. I thought we had that now. Do we not have that now? What the heck is this crazy example? Come on, guys. Can somebody please fix that and not have a stupid example like that? Do I have to write the example here? Come on. Just put.
Okay, nobody here except possibly Jan has any connection to gallery view. So
okay, well, so Devin, track it down. Please don't use this example. It's a really dumb example. Please use an example that has an actual. It's really, really dumb example.
And isn't like 8 inputs for the first basic example?
Yes. Totally dumb. Totally irrelevant and totally dumb. And this delayed thing is no. Okay, Devin, if you can't get this fixed, I will rewrite this. It will take like 3 minutes. Okay, let me know if you have trouble.
Okay, yeah, I'll sure.
Okay, so let's say Oh my gosh. Why doesn't it work in the notebook? It needs to. I mean, that's probably for somebody like Lou to deal with. Should be really straightforward. Crazy. That's really crazy that that doesn't work. Thank you for pointing that out, Ethan. Sigh. Devin, please go chase that one.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Back to full definition. Okay. First point is
if I can just make one quick point. If you look at the example I put there, right? So when you do full definition of F, you see a definition related to dollar assumptions because dollar assumptions isn't protected. And obviously you can't protect dollar assumptions because it's, a user settable variable. But there's nothing shown for plot because plot is protected. That's sort of the current behavior. The question is, should we exclude all system symbols, or maybe have an excluded context goes to, various values to have a finer, grainer control?
I think we need finer control, that's for sure. And let me understand. So also for the stack, for stack viewing, right, on a message break, doesn't that prune context as well? Prune contexts as well?
It does.
Yes, it prunes based on context.
And how does it prune? And is it consistent in its pruning?
I believe it prunes anything that is not on context path.
Okay, but it also prunes inside. Oh, I see. So as it goes into a system symbol, it prunes any internal stuff.
Right. So basically for every frame in the stack, it basically essentially does a free queue of symbol not on context path. And if that's true, it keeps it. And if it's false, it prunes it.
Okay. All right. So what are you proposing here? I mean, I'm worried that excluded context is not going to be enough, that you have to have more stuff about protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So I think for Jan's purposes, and Jan should speak up, I think being able to exclude, system and maybe a couple of other contexts would be, solve a lot of their problems. Of course, then there's the possibility of if you have if you manipulate changes dollar assumptions, then that might get lost somehow between the kernel and the cloud, and that would be a problem also, but maybe a less bad problem than whatever Jan is experiencing right now. So, but I think at least as a first step forward, having an excluded context that allows you to specify which things to exclude would be a useful first step.
So wait a minute, save definitions right now just has true or false.
Save definitions. Okay.
I thought it had an automatic, but
okay, but then excluded context is effectively a sub option to save definitions in some sense.
Sure.
I mean, to my mind, save definitions could explode into a big association of details. Because I think there's more work that has to be done on this. I think this is not, I mean, this is a very undefined thing. What does it mean to take the state of the system and transport it somewhere? Right? I mean, we would be much better off if everything was immutable and we had no state. But realistically, I mean, do you take the state of the random number generator? Do you take what states? What do you take? Do you take, we don't take user metadata like the geolocation. And we don't take the random number seed, do we? We don't. I'm sure we don't take that.
No.
Okay, but so arguably we need a definition of what to take.
Right, and right now, I mean, full definition has one, which is all symbols that appear progressively until you run into protected symbols, and then stop when you hit a protected symbol. Which for system symbols, which are not protected either because they don't want to be protected or because of implementation details, that is sort of apparently hitting the cloud in various ways.
Yeah, it's bad. Okay, listen, guys. My prediction is that this needs to get significantly more sophisticated and that it's going to end up with a bunch of fairly elaborate rules, which I don't see why you shouldn't parameterize, particularly as we experiment with them and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what I think. And I think, go ahead.
I mean, I think excluding system symbols would probably go a long way. And I think maybe if something like dollar assumptions doesn't propagate into the cloud, that might be just fine.
Okay,
it
but
might not.
Yeah, look, what
and
I
of course,
think
yeah, maybe it's not, but I think it might.
I think we're going to need
but,
not only excluded context, we're going to need included symbols, excluded symbols, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I mean, I think we're going to. I would recommend an association that has many, many different pieces. Included symbols, included context, excluded contexts. Those are the two obvious things. But
yeah, sure.
And then maybe things.
No, that makes perfect sense. But we still need a reasonable default, right? That should not usually explode the definition.
I agree completely. But I mean that may be a big list of included symbols that we have to tag in some way. Now, the other possibility, are we able to assign more attributes, or are attributes kind of tapped out? Anybody know?
There may be a bit for one more attribute because we freed up we did some expert cleanup a couple of years ago, but I would have to check with Mark or Rob to know for sure about attributes.
And even though it's 64-bit, we still have that field is not expanded? Right,
because it would basically change the alignment of the whole expert if we did that. Which
isn't it lovely how we go from how we have to go to these very low-level issues occasionally? Yeah, all right, fair enough. But okay, so I mean, for example, I can imagine something where some configuration of attribute bits is determining whether to, like, protected is one, and locked will be another, read protected another, and so on. Would define whether, like, read protected, presumably you never want to, save those, presumably.
Yeah, and that's the logic right now. If it's protected or read protected, it's not included.
Okay, but it's not obvious that protected shouldn't be included. That just means it's not writable. It doesn't mean it's not readable.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think the logic needs to get more complicated, and I think we really have got to just try and analyze the corners of what it means to have the state.
Okay.
But I think what I would recommend doing immediately is introducing an association to represent what call it something like well, I mean, save definitions is a something more like included definitions or something, included definition rules, something like that.
And that actually that exists. Like I think there was that switch already for at least cloud functions. There's an option called include definitions. No, it's not called save definitions anymore for those.
Okay, fine. So then include definitions, I recommend turning that into a great big association. At least, what we can do for right now is have a named option, a string named option for include definitions that references some default the automatic could reference some big default association, but at least we should parameterize it, allowing an association so that we can experiment with what goes on. And then gradually start adding and subtracting symbols from that. That's what I recommend. Seem reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, look at that. Brian and our live stream suggested essentially the same as what I just suggested. Good. I'm also encouraged that okay.
All right.
I mean, I think that the question after that is who will do that experiment basically, and who will do all the testing to check.
I think that's going to be somewhere in the Itai orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. But no, I mean, we'll need a little kickoff meeting with you and Wen and whoever else you think should be there, just to sort of.
Who's the you here? Me?
Jan.
Yeah, Jan.
I was going to say that
me.
Itai, if it's in his orbit, he can still, pull Jan into it, and
yeah, that's what I think should happen there.
Okay.
Sure.
When do you get in town, Jan?
Next week, Monday or Sunday.
Ethan's suggesting why not live stream the entire technology conference? I think, aren't we live streaming pieces of it? I don't know exactly what the plan is there.
I think the keynote is live streamed and everything else is recorded and then uploaded to YouTube.
I don't know why we're not live streaming it. We might as well live stream it. So somebody should suggest that to Danielle, and let's see whether I can fit my keynote in less than.
I was gonna say whoever does that should do it from, more than arm's length away.
Why is it hard? Aren't we recording? Well, aren't we? I mean, we just have to. Well, I don't know what's involved. Let me not say anything about this. But when was it last year? It was like 3 hours and 45 minutes for the keynote or something.
Yes.
This year I have a lot of material.
Okay.
That's not a good sign. Okay.
Snacks.
What's that? Yeah, right. Well, I think it'll have an intermission.
Okay. So ignore those captions there because somehow something bad happened to them. So there was the suggestion about create intermediate directories, and we looked at things that take an overwrite target function.
I think we need to do this next time, unless this is super urgent for this time. Let's.
Well, I don't know if we got something from System Modeler. If there's somebody from System Modeler here, I'd like their take on. So basically, these three functions take an overwrite target option, but it's not clear to us what exactly it's overwriting if that has anything to do with the create intermediate directories option.
Right. So basically, we've been looking at the documentation, and we agree that it might not be the most regular use of our write target, because basically what we are doing is resetting the value of some symbols in memory. So we are not rewriting files.
That has nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this will let's kick this off next time then.
Right, that sounds like something completely different and rather horrifying. Okay, just to comment on the live stream, there should be a function to drop positions returned from sequence position. I'm not sure I understand that one. Brian is making various comments about how the attributes bits could be extended. Yes, we know.
Right. I mean, of course, they can be extended. That creates, obviously MX file incompatibilities, and it's balancing, various constraints, which we may finally get to that point, but for now, we haven't seen an urge large enough to.
Sorry, I lost concentration. What did you just say? What?
Right. That obviously we could, change the expr structure and add more bits, but that would create MX file incompatibilities and possibly other issues I'm not thinking of off the top.
Well, that's not the. I mean, we know MX files are versioned. That would not be disastrous, but there are many other issues.
Right.
But coming back to just comment from Carl. Any chance of a nice big dispersion model being added? Dispersion of what? In what? I don't know in what. Another question from Nicola here, a create link function for doing symbolic links. Yeah, why don't we have that? We have so many other file operations, but we don't have create a symbolic link.
I think it's just something we haven't gone around to. There was a proposal for that, and I'm not sure what its current status is. I mean,
Should not be difficult. It's a very straightforward system call.
On Unix. So the question is, right, until when some version of Windows 10, you had to have admin privileges to create symbolic links on Windows. And so I'm not sure, we'd have to think about exactly, if we have a dedicated symbolic link, we'd have to think about exactly how it maps onto the different systems. That's the only wrinkle. It's not insurmountable. It's
well, maybe it's become easier in Windows 10, in which case that would be something to be looking at now.
Right.
Would this only be for symbolic links or also hard
No,
links?
no, regular links, I would think. But with the symbolic link option. Yeah, I mean, that seems useful. And I'm surprised we haven't had more requests for it. So can we, let's look at that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're being, the dispersion in question is gases and air. Okay. Well, so let me make a comment on that. You say wrapping thousands of lines of Fortran code. In principle, with library, okay, so the issue is, could you write a function repository function that wraps that Fortran code? And the answer is not yet, but because of sandboxing of the library code, that, in other words, you couldn't, well, I believe for desktop distribution, okay, here's a question for people. One could certainly write something, can one write external language code and include it in the function repository? I think the answer is, the problem is that in like Python, for example, there's all kinds of horrors about, which packages have you loaded, at which version are you running, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In C code, I think there are issues about, which executable, what machine are you running on, and so on. But we have solved those problems. We solved them 25 years ago with this directory sandwich business. And I think as soon as you can put packlets and call them from the function repository, that should work. So my theory would be, take your Fortran code and wrap it in the stuff that's needed to put in the function repository, and then you'll be able to do dispersion calculations in Wolfram Language forever just by calling that function in the function repository. But there are some issues there right now. For example, we can't sandboxing in the cloud of external code is a problem that we are currently in the process of solving, but that is not solved yet. Okay, Brian is commenting on our live stream that Windows has many options for symbolic links, junctions, hard links, soft links, etc. Okay, well.
What would be the use case? If they want use case, then we can do it.
Of making of links.
Yeah, what do you want to mount a directory, or do you want
just creating a structure on your disk?
Link to a file, to a directory?
I would assume it's just making links between files. I mean, it's just like, why does anybody make a symbolic link?
Right. Well, it depends on the type. I'm not sure if this is the point that Konstantin is trying to make, but depending on the kind of target, different kinds of links are possible, right? You can't have a hard link to a directory.
Right. Listen, I got to go to a different meeting, but let's put this on the agenda maybe for ILD another time.
Okay.
And those who are following the live stream, we will actually be back on another live stream about geometry and graphics in about 30 to 45 minutes. All right. Got to go. Talk to you all soon. Okay, bye.